We live in an age where it's not your muscle power, it's more your mind power. It's not your brute strength, it's your brain strength, right? And so the faster you can learn, certainly the faster you can earn, but not just financially, in all the areas of your life, all the treasures of your life, your health, your relationships, your career. Socrates says there is no learning without remembering. There is no learning without remembering. A lot of people say, oh, I have a bad memory, right? They always say, I have memory, or I have focus, or I don't have focus, or I have creativity, I don't have creativity. I want you to scrap that. Creativity is not something you have, it's something you do. Focus is not something you have, focus is something you do. Memory is not something you have, it's something you do. And what's the benefit of turning it into a do, as opposed to something you have? What's the benefit? You have control over it, because you could put it into a process. It becomes a strategy, because there's a strategy for reading faster. There's a strategy for remembering names. There's a strategy for having focus. And it's a verb, not a noun, right? And so the goal here when we're talking about this, there's no such thing as a good or bad memory. There is no such thing as a good or bad memory. There's just a trained memory and an untrained memory. How many people here want to learn faster? How many people want to remember more? So the number one rule, the art of memory, the art of learning is the art of attention. The art of learning is the art of attention. And really, that's where observation, that's where presence comes in. And so I'm going to be sharing with you some of my favorite strategies and states to be able to learn any subject or skill faster. By the way, who are the fastest learners on the planet? Who? But children, right? Children. How fast can a child learn a musical instrument compared to an adult? How fast can they learn a second or third language? They learn fast, right? How many people know this? How many people you hear a song and it'll take you back to when you were a child? How many people it's not a song, but maybe it's a fragrance or a food that will take you back decades? Because information combined with emotion became a long-term memory, right? Because we're not logical, we're what? We don't do things logically all the time. We do things what? Emotionally, right? Because we're not logical, we're biological. We're not logical, we're biological. All learning is state dependent. All learning is state dependent. That the emotional state that you feel when you're learning something gets anchored to the learning. Does that make sense? By the way, what was the state that you felt back in school? Primarily, how did you mostly feel in class? Bored, and the other half of the class is like confused, right? Now, on a scale of 0 to 10, what's boredom? On a scale of 0 to 10? 0. Anything times 0 becomes what? 0. And that's why a lot of people don't remember what they learned. It's the emotional state. That all learning is state dependent. All learning is state dependent. I never want to learn in a bored state. We said that children are the fastest learners, right? That they have this curiosity and they play all the time. Now, it's been shown in science, the research, by playing more actually creates neurogenesis and neuroplasticity. What's neurogenesis? New growth, new brain cells. What about neuroplasticity? What does that mean? More connections. So intelligence, in a way, is not necessarily, like Einstein didn't have a bigger brain than anyone here. Probably, it was actually less. He had a smaller brain. But in certain areas of his brain, he had highly connectedness. He did these thought experiments where he would put himself in these brainwave states, specifically theta state, the theta state of creativity. Your brain cycles through different brainwaves. Beta is when you're most awake. You're in beta, most of you right now. Delta is when you're asleep. Hopefully nobody's in delta right now. Theta is right above delta. That's the state of creativity we talked about. You're so relaxed, almost in and out of sleep. And then you're so creative, right? You're very inspired. In between theta and beta, when you're most awake, is a state called alpha. Right? It's a state you go in when you meditate. States you go into when you do deep breathing. State you're also in when you watch television. How many people have ever seen somebody watching television? You're trying to talk to them, but they're watching their favorite show, their sports, or whatever it is, or maybe you're guilty of it too, and honestly, that person is not hearing you. You know that? You're talking to them, but they're so in trance, right? Television programming, it's programming them. They're in such trance, they're in an alpha state. And the alpha state is where your conscious mind is set aside and you're not filtering. It's information just coming in. Alpha state is a great state to learn in, though. Great state to learn facts. Great state to be able to learn foreign languages, also. Great states to learn information like giving presentations and scripts. One of the ways we work with actors, putting them to an alpha state, so they're in this relaxed state of awareness where their conscious mind is set aside and information is just flowing in, like television. And you could control those states because you have a responsibility once you learn the strategies behind it. A lot of people don't learn faster because they feel like they know it already. Going back to chronological age, but it's not chronological age, it's really the age of your mind and your heart. A lot of people don't learn because they haven't emptied their cup. Does that make sense? That you hear all these cliches, but there's truth in every cliche, that your mind is like a parachute, it only works when it's what? It's open. So this is the beginner's mind, right? So you want to forget about anything else than what you're learning here, temporarily. Finally, the T in fast and be fast stands for teach. Teach. I recommend that throughout this entire gathering and beyond, you learn with the intention of teaching it to somebody else. Does that make sense? If you had to teach this to somebody when you got back home, your team, your family, your friends, would you learn it differently? Yes or yes? Would your focus be better? Yes or yes? Would you ask better questions? Would you take better notes? Right? So you learn with the intention of teaching to somebody else. Teach, because when you teach something, you get to learn it twice. Thank you very much.